Yeah, really.
Uh, do you want to do a recap on our board exam?
Not really, since I don't feel fucking confident on
Fuck that thing.
it.
Um,
Well, yeah. I mean, confidence is a weird word. I just feel like the idea of the content and understanding felt good, but then the preparedness for the actual like questions kind of threw me
mhm,
for a loop. It's kind of what I told you.
yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, maybe other people have experiences like that with certain exams that they've done. So yeah, like I don't know. It's just testing, man. I just feel like I am a shit student after being so good at being a student in the beginning phase of my life. I think I burnt myself out, bro. Burnt myself out.
Yeah, burnt yourself out. All right, well, dude, we could honestly, dude, just honestly, like,
Just do it from the head, dude. I already hit record.
yo, this is raw and real, guys. Okay, so I think a really good kind of place that I wanted to talk about was like this whole infobesity thing. And we're here having a podcast, anyways, but I just kind of want to talk about it in the field of like longevity, fitness, and nutrition. I think,
Infobesity.
yeah,
What does that mean?
like so much information that
Oh, yeah. We're talking about the paralysis by analysis type of
paralysis by
situation.
analysis. So
Yeah.
what I was kind of reflecting today, and I think it'd be really cool to kind of talk about is like why people, even though 99.9% of this health and wellness stuff is free, right? They finally start making results when they have a coach or they paid for something or they have like a team behind them. And I say this because like I feel like I have my council of health and wellness like developed. You know what I'm saying? Like I got someone doing my fitness, I got someone doing my nutrition, I have someone looking at my labs, I have like a physician
Hmm.
look at my longevity. Um, why instead of me having to spend hours and hours and hours having to do programs, figuring out the right nutrition plan for me, dialing in my macros, or even like having to review labs, like all that stuff is cool. And like that's what we do professionally, right? But then to turn around and have someone else do that for you, I've gotten the best results I've ever gotten, because I don't think I'm wasting time uh, trying to figure it all out. I'm just taking action. You know what I'm saying?
The reason why you're not getting results, bro, is that there's too much being conjured up in your head about what you're doing wrong. And you probably don't give yourself enough time to see the consistency that you need in order to actually get the result, right? I mean, what do most studies look at in order to like analyze the amount of progress someone has made? 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. How often are
Yeah.
you changing stuff with that, ADD brain of yours?
Dude, I was changing stuff all the time, bro. All the time.
And so then,
Yeah.
well, let's analyze that, right? Like, what's your goal? Well, okay, what is your goal, and then what made you seek out the coach?
So the goal now, I had to refrain from like doing what I was good at, which is like more in that combat space, but now like go into like not hiding behind fitness. You know what I'm saying? Like not hiding my fitness. So
Mm.
like now the goal is to like compete consistently in endurance races and high rocks events while maintaining like a shredded body lean year round. So that's the goal. The jacked and tan body all year round.
So you're telling me you want the fucking unicorn and don't want to periodize shit, and you're trying to figure out a way to make that all
No, no,
happen
no.
all at once.
It is periodized. It is
Oh,
periodized
oh,
because
oh, oh, gotcha,
now that
gotcha.
someone else is doing the coaching, and I got races in there. But the point of the matter is, it's like my ADD brain, right? Like you said,
Hmm.
was trying to figure it all out, and I think, dude, just so much mental space and energy trying to figure it out that like once I had someone else look at it, they're like, no, this is just what you have to do. So all I've been doing is just showing up. I've just been showing up, and then my fiance and I got like things on the calendar every month. I'm like, oh, there you go. there you go. I got to go do that thing. I got to go do that thing. So, um, periodized,
Hmm.
it is periodized, but that is a bit of a unicorn, right? Jacked in 10 year round and performing at high levels.
Hmm. If only you worked for a company that would allow you to be jacked and tan year round and make it so that eating wasn't an issue.
Hmm.
Kidding. Um,
Hmm.
um, but no, I mean, the reason why most people have a hard time doing it on their own is that you're not really sitting there to reflect and probably talk to the coach about what it is and how you're feeling after giving yourself a week's worth of time in that phase, where the coach will likely push you into doing that for another week or two. And right, like next thing you know, it's been enough time to actually kind of analyze some actual data on yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I think too, going back to what we started this with, you know, the the questions you tell yourself are going to be, I guess, what you're gonna deflect a lot of things like internally, right? You're like, I really want this, but I also want this. And then the coach painted that picture of like that timeline for you. We're doing this up to this point, right? And so just hear me out. Let's see it. Let's actually get through this phase and see what we need to redo on the next one so that we can approach it better in a fashion that's going to allow for more success, right?
Yeah.
So I think for you, knowing you and your personality type, is that you kind of get shiny object syndrome with training, and you want to integrate the next thing that you see because it looks cool, and you're like, oh my god, this thing is cool, and I suck at it, and like you immediately can like scale and progress that over a few weeks, so it feels like progress, but it's not actually helping the bigger picture at large, right? It's like training
Dang,
with
way to put up
Adam.
a mirror on me, Marcos. Way to put a mirror on me, dog.
Well,
It's
it's
like
like
you're a
training with
coach or something.
nah. Well, it's like training with Adam. He says the same things. Man, sometimes this shit's boring. I was like, well, what's the goal? If you have a clear directive that we need to like steer it towards, then we can make the adjustments. But
Yeah.
we're all just kind of in here for dad fit right now. It's like, let's get some hypertrophy. Let's look good with our shirts off a little bit, get some arm definition so the tank top looks good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And again, like he's like, I don't understand how you could stay like into this and like be like, deal with like how boring it is at times. I was like, yeah, it's boring, but also I just love the process. I love the fact that like right now I'm looking at it from like you know, I'm looking at it from a weekly perspective. It's no longer what am I getting done in the day, but how am I doing this over the course of a week? A week is
Yeah.
now like, the benchmark of like enough sets and reps and volume, right? And then
Yeah.
like it takes, you got to do at least 4 sessions in. So maybe you need to reframe your brain into thinking like a session is an entire week's worth of all of your volume. X amount of zone two, X amount of this, X amount of
Yeah.
that, so that you can help analyze that at that next level. And then,
Yeah.
dude, next thing you know, it's 8 weeks. You're like, fuck, I
Yeah.
feel like, I don't know. I was listening to, who was it today? One of the guys that's going to do the enhanced games. I guess he was like a silver medalist on the uh, Australia swim team, right? So
Dang.
he's like, his goal is to try to break the world record of the 50 meter where he used to swim 100, right? So he talked about how he's going about it and training and doing these things. He's like, I actually get to train in a like drastically different way for this go around versus 100 meters. And he like literally analyzed himself to be like, from training 100, I have to keep my weight down a little bit more and can't focus on power output and production and hold enough mass to maybe move myself fast enough on a 50 because I'm doing both events at the Olympics. And we all know, how do you get remembered at the Olympics as a swimmer? It's how much gold you're wearing around your neck, bro.
Exactly. Multiple. I mean, freaking. Yeah. Michael Phelps made that like the standard. So, yeah. No, that makes sense,
But
dude. I like that. Yeah.
like, let me ask you that. Like, you know more about energy systems than I do. I just, I don't. I really didn't study it worth a shit. I understand the very bare bones of it. So when it comes to like power output and speed and force production, right? What energy pathway are you primarily using?
So it's going to be the ATP PCR, that first 0 to 15 seconds, right? So
Okay.
when you have that power output, depends on like what that looks like, right? If it's a sprint, power clean, med ball slam to throw, right? Just the quickness. And then you could get anal about it and be like, all right, well, velocity-based training. Where do you stand in your velocity as it relates to your ATP PCR, like your aerobic threshold power and all these things? So that's where it's at. And then obviously they have the glycolytic system, which is kind of like in that 2-minute range. And then you have, your aerobic capacity, which is anything above that. And
So he's technically, as a previous athlete, a difference between a 50 and 100 for him was like, I think he said his best was like 21.5, and then it was like 47 seconds for the 100 meter.
100, okay.
Right.
So primarily 15 seconds of that ATP PCR and then a little bit of glycolytic, but it's primarily power output over distance,
Yeah, but I wonder if it bridged. So he's like, I think I identified that here's his theory, right? So he's like, I'm going to train. He's 33, so he's basically our age, right? I'm going to train this way without any of the PEDs. I'm still clean, and I want to see what I can like get myself into peak shape with.
Yeah.
Look at some different things, and I think this is kind of cool. Where like now we're seeing, I think evidence based, right? Is like how do we use the tools and science at the time to get better and better. And see the result. And I like that he was like, I'm going to try to get back at 33, what I think is like peak shape for me before trying to like hop on the anabolics, and then maybe some BPC or whatever else that is. And
I really want to see how fast I swim.
but basically, but he also like recognized that like the energy system differences and tapping into more of the, glycolytic system potentially on the 100 would hinder the potential of this, like just going after one. No,
exactly. That makes sense. It makes sense when you're a multiple sport athlete. Like track and field is like the perfect sport to do it because track and field athletes are like 50, 100, 400, 800, 1600, right? Or even athletes because they have everything. You got to throw. You've got to think. So like you could do tons of things with them. They really are. People talk about hybrid athletes nowadays and they just do whatever. It's like run and lift, right? But like it's like when you think about like an athlete when it comes to competition, someone that can maintain endurance, power, and all these different modalities across. I mean, that's why CrossFit is also pretty cool too. But if you think about CrossFit, they're still more in that 15-minute kind of workout zone, right?
I mean,
it just depends on the workout.
I think the games, like I used to not like it as much because of like the test of so many different time domains, even though a lot of them do kind of sit in that 10-ish minute, or I mean, on paper, this thing might take people 10, 15, 20, but then the games athletes just put them all in a similar kind of time domain. It's pretty wild.
It's probably wild. I think what's going to be interesting with this enhanced game stuff, like especially for this athlete, is going to be actually the power systems are cool. The fueling strategy is going to be cool, but I think it's with all these drugs, like with all the nutraceuticals and all that stuff, I would love to actually get like a muscle biopsy and see if his fibers actually start changing to like muscle type 2X, like the real power stuff. Like if like really start seeing his physiological like advancements, I would like to see that.
Yeah. Well, so then he mentioned too, I know I'm looping this all back around, I promise. I think he's in the 99th percentile when it comes to like his explosiveness of like vertical jump and like broad jump. When it comes to like an Olympic athlete, like Olympic caliber athletes, however they test that. But then he's like in the 60th percentile for NFL or NBA athletes. He's like, I'm in the middle of the pack when it comes to like this demographic of people that do like jumping specific stuff versus everybody that is like generalist and again, world class. So he's like, literally, I'm going to try to be so explosive off the block that like, that I hopefully can shave off, I think he said he's like 0.59 or whatever it is. It's like, less than a second away from like achieving this thing. And I thought that was super interesting. Like talk about the dedication to periodization. Your training plan is going to look, wherever you think that like you can eke out just the, fractions of time in order to like make this thing happen. And then, you're over here saying like, oh yeah, this information obesity or infobesity or, the fact that we're like, dude, I feel like listening to podcasts is almost like a drug in a sense for people. Like this knowledge drug, for people that are like.
Well, I would also say, I think it's context dependent. There's infobesity probably in the fitness and nutrition field as it comes to the double-edged sword that social media is. But when it comes to true high performance and true nuanced conversations, I don't think there's much out there actually, because there aren't professionals are doing professional things. You know what I'm saying? Like if you
Mm-hmm.
look at like Andy Galpin just created his podcast Perform, and that's like only a few episodes in, and it's like
It's so funny. I was literally gonna message you earlier asking if you started listening to some of his stuff.
but you know what I'm saying? He's a professional doing professional things. He's created content because it helps him out with his business. But when you look at most professionals, they're not doing that. But when you look at the fitness and nutrition field, and maybe let's just say the health field entirely, I've been listening to people like Dr. Mike, for example. Not Dr. Mike Ezersel, but this other Dr. Mike.
Dr. Mike. Yeah,
Dr.
no,
Mark, where
but he's also
he's
more
also
longevity focused.
yeah, he's just really trying to get people down the middle again, because there is so much information that you get paralysis by analysis, or you're kind of like me where you try to integrate everything and then you realize you're like, okay, this might not be the season to integrate this thing because I'm like, I have this goal right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, but having something on your agenda that like you really do look forward to is also super important, right? So like,
Yeah.
it's never the right time to do something, but having it there again, maybe you I'll use Josh as the example here, right? Josh, fresh newborn, dealing with the baby stuff. Literally, I mean, I don't feel like outside from like a one-off like stomach issue, he hasn't missed like a day of training with me, which is like, again, okay, cool. Like, but I remember myself when we first had Zeke that I ran into the issue of that. But then, recently he's mentioned we need, like, I want something on the calendar that is performance minded, because I know that I think that my body will get to where I want, more so where I want it to be as a result of like performing. And I was like, cool. So what are we doing?
Yeah. Is it like a CrossFit thing or like a race? Like, what is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? We've been doing these rucks on our Monday, Fridays. Like, let's just switch it to swimming, just something a little different, because now like we can be more generally prepared if it is like, dude, let's just sign up for this October sprint try in Lake Mead. But I mean, it's like a 2-hour thing. But it's like, think about like, okay, we have to ride the bike. We got to do a little bit of running. Again, we got to do a little bit of everything, right? So I was like, well, if we just start with just swimming twice a week, at least then it's like we could say we could probably do it, and then we like. Granted, he's riding like a electric bike, but he's like still biking, so he's getting some of the stimulus. Can bust out the other bike. The last thing that we need to do then is just, I mean, it's only a 5K. I think we could likely just go do it, not well, but go do it. I feel like we're at the general level of fitness to handle that. So
that's a type of fitness that like I think I love, that you just do whatever just cause in like a month or two,
Well, yeah, but even then, if like this is on the calendar, like we're going through like the GPP stuff right now. There's nothing serious. We're not trying to swim 800 meters in one go. But you have to start with at least just hopping in the pool, do some 50s, do some 100s, do some 200s. Obviously, open water swimming is far, far different when you have to go practice that a little bit. But again, that might be where, as much as it pains me to go away from the hypertrophy on the weekends, we're going to have to go maybe drive over to Lake Mead, one of these mornings, hop in, maybe get a wetsuit because it's a little cold. You know what I mean? Like,
that's hilarious that you talked about like something on the calendar. I had just a call right before this with a client, and he's my boxing client, and he's killing it, his training, all that. We're losing a bit of weight because he wants to do a body composition thing. But he just really just said, Seamus, I feel like I really need more accountability. I'm like, we talk every day. Mm-hmm. You're doing your check-in weekly. You're doing a call with me right now. And he's like, no. You know what it is? It's something on the calendar. And then I was like, okay, like, and this is the first time this guy's boxing for real, like a real match. I've had over like 300, 400 matches of wrestling and jiu-jitsu in my life. And you kind of have to realize like when you have something on the calendar, but it's not a sport like wrestling where you could just get it on the weekends and kind of do it. Like this is him getting on a stage, monumental moment with someone else, mano y mano.
This motherfucker's trying to knock you out, bro. Like, it's a little,
It's two grown men, both dialed in. I literally told him, I was like, dude, this is not something you can F with. Like this weight loss plan that we're doing right now, like it's cool that you're doing some fat loss. It's cool that you're doing some training. It's cool that you're doing some boxing. Mm-hmm. But when you step up in a boxing room with someone else and they've spent their time training hard and you spent your time training hard and you didn't do everything in your possible power to do it, it's not like a sprint try like you can hang out with. It's just, oh, I want to just go do it. No, it is literally you versus him. And you are basically like, this is the closest you can get to like killing someone legally. So you need to be like all in prepared, like your whole life shifts. And he was like, Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I feel that if I put that on the calendar, my whole life will shift to that. And I'm like, all right, put it on the calendar then. Let's go.
I mean, I have another buddy. He he literally, like, I swear, he's like, I got a fight booked, and then literally like a couple days later it gets canceled. Yeah, I feel so bad. Like, he's trying to get into boxing, but I feel like it is more of like a dying sport, right?
Yeah.
But same thing, it's like you could see that, like, from the posts, they differ when that thing is actually there. It's like, all right, cool, it's booked, like I'm actually going after it. I think literally out of all the times I've seen him post like an actual fight coming to fruition, and then he says a guy backed out, like, his name's Rudy, and like Rudy was a wrestler too. Like, honestly, like, his the whole family genetically gifted in wrestling, and like have like just more muscle mass than, like, I mean, he was like jacked at 12 years old because of wrestling.
Yeah.
And his like as the, but I'm like, dude, getting him, like, we used to like throw on gloves, like, going into high school, like it was like 8th grade, or maybe it was actually 8th, 9th, or 10th. Dude, he punched me once, just a little squabble. Hands is brick hands, bro. I was like, no. I'm like, okay. I was like, I thought you were just gonna touch me up a little bit here, bro. Like,
I'm going back to my math class.
but yeah, basically, I was like, yeah, nah. I was like, I'm sticking with baseball, bro. You can stick with the wrestling and all the other stuff. But then he did have like his first professional fight, but I feel like he's only had one fight I've seen because of like people backing out on the calendar and something like, like boxing. Whereas everything else, again, is like, now obviously we talked about having something on the calendar. Well, taking our freaking test last Friday was something on the calendar, and you think I would have prepared more for it, but like it took me up until like the last week to do that. And I think that's, again, part of the reason why I'm a little unsure about it. I was like, and I think this goes back to the further out something is for somebody, the more likely you are to procrastinate about getting started with the things that get you there. So it's like, okay, I couched the 5K, but the 5K is a year from now, right? Like, well, when does the actual thing start? Like you signed up for it.
It needs some proximity. Yeah, it needs to be within, like, it depends on the person, but like 3 weeks out, 6 weeks out, 90 days out,
I mean, I think from, again, how long we went to try to do this damn board exam, it was too long. It was too much time. We got done with it, and it's like, cool, we get to sign up in 3 months for the test that's 3 months after that.
So you have to do this thing. So you did this thing that took about 3 months. You finished that, but then the sign up is 3 months from the thing you finished it, and then the test is 3 months from that date. But that was like 6 months of like sitting our butts.
I know. Well, I mean, you were good about it. I mean, same thing here. You stuck with the class and went to that like once or twice a week and read the stuff. And whereas I was like, I'm not really the type of person that goes and like learns from people reading from slides, even though there may have been some instances where it would have helped me here. So again, we'll see. Again, we'll come back to this, and I'll say, well, Seamus passed on the first try, and I didn't, or we both by the seat of my pants.
We'll see. Okay, to talk about the infobesity thing too. At some point when I've been studying for this board exam, I think the last 2 weeks I just could not take any more information in my head. And like you said, podcasts and audiobooks were like drugs to me. They are, because I'm like, listen to this. And then the fact that like I just was like, no podcast, no audiobook, because I'm taking in so much information right now. I'm trying to ace this test. And if my brain takes anything else, I will explode. And like Friday, I took my test. I literally went home and I was like, I watched Cobra Kai. So I watched like 5 episodes straight. And I was like, oh, my brain feels good. Like
the infobesity part of that too was like, there's a lot of stuff that you were listening to and reading that were almost diametrically opposed to what we actually do in practice versus like what's actually out there from like, quote, the government website. And then I mean, you're just also like, dude, I listened to so many people with the literature talking about X, Y, Z. And then you get this other thing and you're like, granted, it's easy to remember because it's so like
generic,
not generic, but it's so much different than what you're doing from like day to day. Whereas I know like other people struggled with maybe that section of like,
the science,
blood work and the science and stuff, because we're always doing it. And I was just like laughing. And like, so I have to tell you, I forgot to tell you about this today. I go in, I was like, hey, per the MyPlate recommendations, okay, fitness podcast, talk about MyPlate. All right, guys. Like, no, that was on the board exam, guys. Surprisingly, like if you look at the visual of the plate, right, you would actually likely be closer to actually getting enough protein in your daily basis. But if you go off of the amount that they say from the
Per
My
age
Plate
group. Yeah.
per age group, let's just go. We're gonna just everything's basically 14 plus. It's all the same recommendation,
It's like
right?
6 ounces a day. I was like, what?
6.5, dude, 6.5 for an adult. Okay, but like six. Well, again, I don't know if that was like per group of people, like per like your calorie total, right? Like, is
No,
that
no, they
this?
said 6.5 ounces of protein for the day.
Yeah. But I mean, doesn't it vary a little bit or scale up if it's like the same proportion for someone eating 3,000 calories versus 2,400 in the day?
They don't account for TDEE or kcals in my plate.
But they have My Plate calorie meal plan recommendations. All right, well, hold on. Let's just go ahead and I'm gonna share my screen on the My Plate recommendation because Seamus, as I was studying for this test, even if it was a half ditch effort.
A one last hurrah. Ah!
Well, again, I think this is interesting because I think it ties in. All right, I'm gonna share this so people that are actually, I'm gonna have to imagine most people just listen. All right, well, this will be a good time to go and look at the actual video portion. I assure you guys. I assure you. All right, cool. Seamus, can you see?
Yes, yes.
All right, molto bene. So if you look at this visual, it's actually, I mean, do we say not terrible, right? Like if you had someone eat this 3 times a day with their portioning on a, okay, well, again, like what does
Not
the
bad.
plate look like? What's the measurement of the plate?
Yeah, it just depends. It just depends. It's not
let's
the
just say a
bad course.
normal American,
Half of it, fruits and veggies and protein and a bit of carbs. That's perfect.
right? And then the protein, again, we'll call that like a third, right? I don't know. They're like, it's supposed to be about a quarter. Anyway, so as I was exploring it deeper, as I'm diving deeper into the website, okay, where is it? Sample plan. All right. So look at it's personalized age, sex, height,
All
weight,
right.
physical activity. Okay. And then in here, look at this, bro. I found it.
Oh, okay. There you go then, cuz. Okay.
7 ounces. Oh shit, an extra half ounce if you're at 3,000 calories
7 ounces
versus.
still at 3,000 calories. How much protein is that? 7 ounces of chicken's only like 45 grams of protein for the day.
Well, here's what I wondered. Also, did we get that question right about the seafood?
I believe we did.
Okay, yeah. So 1 ounce of seafood across the entire week is about 8 ounces. So, right.
There you go.
No, but so, oh, dude. Okay, going back to the picture of the plate. Like, I'm sorry, but like a quarter of your plate with a lean protein source is not an ounce. It's not an ounce.
Dude, bro. I don't know if they've ever like weighed anything over in the USDA, bro.
Dude, I know, right? Who's writing these public policies?
Because
Probably a
dude, six and a
politician.
half ounces, like I get that for like a lady maybe doing like 3 ounces here and then 3 ounces there. But that's still only about 60 grams of protein or less per day. If you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at protein and if you're being protein leveraging for any goal, like you want to be closer to like maybe a body weight or a lean body mass per gram. So that just sounds ridiculous.
I know, right? It was all very bizarre. Okay, but so then I took this and threw it into ChatGPT per the recommendations of the 3,000 calories because that's what I do with my free time. Just
Then it
kidding.
gave you a meal plan, right?
No, I didn't have it. I just wanted to know like what are the like what is the split? So it actually ended up getting like based off of this kind of like I guess because again with the dairy you're getting extra protein in and then some extra ones like you're probably getting in about 115 grams of protein, which even my doctor he was like I'm kind of surprised that actually seems not terrible from the government
Not
recommendation
terrible for
for
the
protein.
government.
And I was like yeah I was kind of surprised too like literally I feel like again the general consensus of general health now do start to look a little bit better overall. And
I
yeah,
guess
I don't know.
I gotta give him some flack due to the fact that like this is for the average American and probably just to get out of disease state, just to be like okay,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you and I are looking at performance metrics and optimizing, but
Yeah,
99% of the population is probably not they could probably benefit from that. You know what I'm saying?
For real, I mean, that again, infobesity at its finest, like so much information about like wellness and people that come to us and the differences in the general person. So it is a significant difference in the sense of like just doing the recommendations there as a starter, might be, again, there's no mention of processed foods even really being worked into those categories. It's really like, again, whole food promoting, which at its core, I think is what all the diets agree upon anyways. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was, I guess reason I'm bringing this up is I was trying to write a newsletter for today. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to use the Andy Galpin podcast as like the framework of like the VO2 to create another post. He didn't really go into like the exact things I was wanting to try to like highlight to like pull information.
Yeah.
So I was like, dang. I was like, he's more about like, this is what you would do to increase it versus like, this is like, I thought he was going to get more nuts and bolts on like VO2, like a TIA in a sense.
More of the like longevity components of like, hey, this is where you stand in a certain
some
grade.
of the stats,
Yeah, some stats. He's more
but he did mention,
yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well then, but it led me down into another one that was like going into what you're saying. I went to the Huberman thing, which led me to Gabrielle Lyons. And I was like, okay, we'll go to her thing. All right, cool. Let's look at all this. All right, cool. Let's go to this other website. Like think about all the steps I took just to like come up with some like content to think about wanting to send our patient base. Took a lot of like diving into, again, this information overload that can really be there, sift through it, and really list out 6 critical points that people should consider about skeletal muscle mass. And I was like, but I'm like, again, like I feel like I've sent this exact email a few times already.
You've
like,
just rewrapped it a few times,
Yeah, but I think I finally like, have figured out, ways of trying to convey something, again, that might be a little bit fresh or hopefully steer people to some other things that they're not listening to, or like, again, why should people focus on their lean tissue a bit more? Like, again, we're hearing more about that. I think she's obviously a big proponent of talking about that, and muscle mass being, quote unquote, your biggest organ, or maybe your most vital one. We'll say quote, because obviously like everything works synergistically. But having that storage space to like put some sugars and stave off cardiovascular disease and help your insulin and your blood sugars and so many of those other things. Again, it's like all this stuff in this little brain all the time for you and me, bro. Like just pulsating.
For the guys, for the people listening, just what happens between me and Marcos and our private conversations outside of this podcast is like, how do we get people that we love all this stuff? Okay, don't get us wrong. Like we're super passionate, but how do we portray this to people that are quote unquote uninfluenceable to be influenced? Mm-hmm. That's the question. Is how do we get someone that doesn't have any passion for this or even deems it like unnecessary or even hates it to be like, those two got a point? That's the question, right?
Yeah, our question here is, how do you create unconscious competence? How are you doing something so habitually you could do it but standing on your head? Are these habits something that you want to continue to focus on in perpetuity, for your longevity, for the quality of life that you deem important? And if so, you really should narrow it down to really basic critical tasks that you can get done in a very efficient manner. Mm-hmm. That is it. Don't let the information overload get you. Once you get into the weeds later on, test it out. Like Seamus is saying, he's like, I'm into the weeds with regards to performance. I want to try all these things all at once. But that's when the coach steps in and the coach says, hey, you need to cool it. Focus on these things first. Get really good at these things. And then we'll throw in some of the other stuff. I'm sure that's what your coach is doing. He's literally kind of creating some guardrails for you. He's like, hey, you can have maybe he even throws in a free day for you every now and again. He's like,
well, I'll be honest, the coach. Okay, the coach is the person that created my program. They've been on this pod before, but it's Jason.
I'm not surprised.
Jason's amazing, guys. But basically, like the training program split is stuff that like I know it like the back of my hand, but I avoid it because it's not the stuff I like. And now that like it's in there, I'm like, oh my God, all the things that like I've been needing to work on or all the issues I've been having, I'm like, they're just getting better. And then the person watching my nutrition to make sure it's all this is Desiree. And literally we had a deep talk and she's like, you're kind of already on this stuff, but like it would make sense for you to do this instead with your specific goals right now. So we
Mm-hmm.
made like a whole shift to being more like cardio adapted. And I ran my 5K yesterday. Dude, I was killing it on my 5K yesterday. I was like, this is the best I've ever felt fueled, felt strong, felt my aerobic capacity getting better. And I was like, dang,
Wow. Wait a minute.
look, following a plan, following a plan.
But you followed a nutrition plan that your wife laid out for you? I mean, most people can hardly listen to one thing their wife says, let alone following the nutrition plan. So kudos to you.
It's because I hired her. And for
That's
those
because you're
listening,
paying her.
you can also hire her. And I'm trying to get these people on the pod, Marcos. It's insider knowledge here, but the FAY network. It's this network where your insurance it's FAY. So it's dietitians on demand, basically, where you literally can meet with someone that you like. And the cool thing about it is it's all through your insurance. So I'm not paying her anything because my insurance is paying through her, but she's making something, you know. And it's cool because I would love to get someone on the pod for this, Marcos, because the reason is talk about it as a business for a dietitian, right? Like as a side business or a side practice. And then two, for the audience at large to talk about like, well, for the first time, I think in society, people are starting to get access to dietitians, telehealth style, and also being affordable, and also not like, oh, you have to get a referral from your doctor, and also not just because of that dietitian because you're in a dire like health crisis, but like because you just need help with something. And I think that's why I think it's really cool, this whole like telehealth dietitian network thing.
Yeah, I mean, kind of makes me sad that we didn't go become dietitians. No, just kidding.
Who knows, bro? We finished our board exam.
No.
Just kidding.
Well, I mean, that's part of why we did that, right? Is to be able to do the health coaching in conjunction maybe with the dietitian in a way that is more available to general people. Because again, like the more people we influence to create a lasting impact, the better off all of us are as a society. The more you can focus on the stuff that is most important to you. So it is cool. I mean, the FAY network, that sounds great. I mean, I know, like I mentioned to you, the kind of idea behind like the CrossFit Health initiative, right?
Yeah.
Is having like a network, and the credential people in, a few different facets, but also understand like how that is like maybe your main focus, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm sure that like FAY would then have even specialists in different categories too, like, running dietitian with this, So, I mean, I think the world really does open up quite a bit. But same thing, I feel like everybody and their mom is creating a network or a, collaborative effort. And even then it's overwhelming. Like, I've never heard of this. I've never heard of that company, says
Infobesity, brother. Is it good? Yeah. Is it bad? I don't know. Infobesity. I mean, it's an information overload, but with information comes access, and access means action. And so with that being said, I think infobesity could be this double-edged sword where it's like too much information, where it's paralysis by analysis, or it's enough information where, hey, there's a piece for everybody, right? So kind of a little spin there on the whole infobesity, Marcos.
I know, yeah. Continue to take access and do things. And again, the information is again a great segue into maybe finding someone that is a professional, right? Like I'm now like I've tried some stuff on my own. I just can't stick with it. It doesn't work. Or does it not work? Or again, is it like, are you the case of Seamus where you just need someone to fucking, pull the rug out from under you when you're, like not doing the things that you should be, and also making you go back and focus on stuff that like you're going to skip. Coaches are going to make, it's like, why didn't you do that? Nah, just didn't feel like doing my curls today. It's like, okay, was it because of an injury or is it because you just don't like doing it? It's like, I don't like this angle. I don't like this thing, whatever, and then the coach will be like, okay, well, we want some sort of horizontal pulling movement and we're going to work it in there. So let's try this instead. It's like, all right, cool. Or no, just eat your Wheaties, take your vitamins, Seamus.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, little Mezzologue episode, guys. I hope you like it. Freestyle. Sure. I don't know.
Freestyle. I saw you like looking down. I was like, I'm just gonna hit record and see how the beginning awkwardness of us trying to decide what we're talking about might resonate. But yeah, guys, obviously our goal here is to continue to bring exciting content and also stuff that is, again, just top of mind to keep our consistency fresh. as I was listening to other things today, the hardest thing sometimes is just hitting record. So we appreciate you listening. Obviously, as people have followed us over the last year and a half, it's been a fun journey. And we still deal with those awkward, what are we talking about? What are we doing things? So we really appreciate that.
Technical issues still constantly.
Yeah, technical. Yeah, this episode happened as a result of things not working as well with someone else's phone. Always happens, but we're like, hey, we still need we need practice. We need reps. But Seamus, anything else we need to plug? Anything else? Fey Network, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
supporting
we're gonna have to get
your
something
fiance.
from there, and we'll get that going. If anyone wants to work with Desiree, like honestly, just like, hit her up on her Instagram, and I think she's there on Fey Network.
Certified RDN, right? So she has all the necessary credentials to help you, from like literally making an actual meal plan for you legally, which again is the difference between a nutrition coach and a dietitian. So letting people know that is
And
super
there's
important.
also like MNT, medical nutrition therapy. So if, as part of the service too, guys, if she wants to do like, I don't know, like your labs and stuff like that, like she can talk about like your specific diagnosis, whether it be like PCOS or like, gout or something. There's MNT in there too.
Good deal. All right, cool. Well, guys, thanks again for another. What did we said? The Mezzologue. What do we call Mezzologue? Thank God. I mean, I thought of it. Yeah. Because we had our micro bite, our mezza for our middle size thing, the mezzanine, right, and then our macro perspective episodes, which are looking at the bigger picture. So, and so to avoid rambling, cut off here. Peace.